Welcome everyone to Education Abroad 101. Some quick reminders, you're muted, your cameras are off. We are recording this session, the chat feature is disabled, and we encourage you to use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. Today, we're gonna start off with introductions. We're gonna talk about health and safety abroad, finances and scholarships, academics abroad, program types, housing, and we'll have time at the end again for Q&A. My name is AJ LeBlanc. I am the Advising Center Coordinator, and I'm also one of the Education Abroad advisors. I meet with students interested in Ireland, the Netherlands, and the UK, and I am here with my colleague, Eileen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eileen Tillman, and I'm one of the Education Abroad advisors here at IPO. I'm going to help with the Q&A.
I'll turn it over to Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm an Education Abroad peer advisor. I'm a junior this year. I'm majoring in public health, and then I'm minoring in education. And then I went abroad this past fall, so fall 2021, and I went to Verona, Italy, and I went through our partner program, USAC.
Thanks, Abby.
Hi, I'm Chase. I'm a BDIC major in ancient political theory with minors in classic civs, philosophy, and poli-sci, and I went abroad in spring of 2021, which was the spring of my sophomore year with Kappa Florence, and I'm currently a junior, and I'm going abroad again my senior year first semester with University of New York, Prague.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm currently a senior and I am majoring in Japanese and sociology. I went abroad during the 2020-2021 academic year at the International Christian University in Tokyo, Japan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick. I am a current senior majoring in history. And I went abroad the summer after my freshman year in 2019 on one of our faculty taught programs with CIEE in Santiago, Dominican Republic.
Thanks, Nick. All right, so we're going to start off by talking about safety abroad because that's definitely one of the first things our families want to know. Is it safe to send students abroad? Andrea Drake is our Director of International Health, Safety, and Security. We've had her long before COVID. She has a network of folks all over the world. She works with colleagues at other US schools and university to talk to them about what they're doing for risk management. She's in contact with all of our partners abroad. She has plans A through Z, AA, triple Z, like she knows what's happening and is constantly monitoring what's going on in the world. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions for her about safety abroad. All of our programs are vetted for risk management. So what's happening in the country with COVID, not only has she been looking at daily case rates, vaccination rates, she's also looking at the healthcare system. So if other things happen, so if a student, something happened, they broke their arm, are they going to be able to get a bed in the hospital if it's a non-COVID related thing? What are quarantine procedures, housing? So she's looking at everything from all angles because we never want to send a student abroad if it's not going to be safe and they're not going to get healthcare that they need. Students have pre-departure orientation before they leave through our office, and they often have a second pre-departure with their program that's more location specific. There's always on-site support. Students have access to their in-country as well as UMass Student Services. We always tell students that UMass does go with them. So they have mental health, physical health, 24-hour emergency support for anything that they need. And students are also covered by emergency international travel insurance that of course we hope they will never need, but they have access to information. So if anything does happen, they'll know what they need to do. They can get a hold of us, they'll be able to get a hold of their on-site support, and we will get them the resources that they need. So we're going to start off by talking about pre-departure orientation. So Nick is one of our peer advisors and he's been here for 3 years. So he not only had his own pre-departure, but he's presented at our outgoing pre-departure for all of our students. So Nick, can you talk briefly about the topics that we cover before students leave?
Yeah, definitely. So pre-departure orientation is one of the events that we pride ourselves in hosting, especially when it used to be in person. They're virtual now, but definitely some of the things that we talk about, there's a large section on safety. Andrea Drake gives a wonderful presentation about all the different aspects that go into, monitoring and vetting programs, as well as making sure that they are still safe to send students to. Additionally, there is an opportunity to hear from return students, peers such as ourselves, where we tell some fun stories as well as some important stories for people to know, things to know about going abroad, ways to prepare yourself. Additionally, there is a large section on travel preparation. So, knowing what to pack, what not to pack, how much to pack, as well as cultural considerations. So knowing how to navigate in a cross-cultural context and maneuver your way through maybe an unfamiliar culture. So definitely a lot of safety preparation in terms of social life, as well as just hearing and getting excited about studying abroad in general.
We focus heavily on physical and mental health abroad as well, letting students know that UMass has a travel clinic, what you need to do if you have prescription medication, what your access is to mental health resources. So we really want to help students think about what the support is that they have here and what that might look like abroad. So Catherine, when you were abroad, I think it was pre-vaccination, right? Okay, so can you talk about the information that your university sent to you before you left?
Yes, I can. So prior to departing for Japan, they sent me multiple emails, and in those emails, they gave us, really big handbook on what to do if we were to get sick, for example, or all the university resources that we had access to, in addition to the resources that we have from UMass and IPO. So I knew that staying in Japan, I would probably need to see a dentist. I would need to probably go to the hospital in case I thought I had COVID or not, but they had everything available in this handbook. They gave me the information to the doctors in the nurse's office at the university, who was then able to help me make the appointments that I needed and gave me all the information and the addresses of these locations as well.
Thanks. So yes, the good news was Catherine did not have COVID. She did have bronchitis, but they helped with that. They made sure she got what she needed. So Abby was abroad, like she said, last semester. So Abby, how did USAC support you in terms of entry requirements and what to know before you got there?
Yeah, so the entire summer before I went this fall, they were just keeping in contact with us, like emailing us and just letting us know like day to day how like it was changing in Italy and like the entry requirements. About a week before we left, they had a pre-departure meeting where they kind of just went over COVID stuff like protocols and like what to do if we got sick and stuff we needed to do to get into the country. We actually didn't know until about a week before we left if we were going to have to quarantine or not when we got there. We didn't, which was nice, but we just didn't know. It was just kind of up in the air like all summer, but we knew we were allowed to still go. Basically the rules for us is we just had to be vaccinated and we needed a negative test, which was it's given and like that was fine. And then when we got there, we had a 3-day orientation where they just kind of talked about our program and talked about and like brought us around the city. But in that orientation, they gave us a big booklet about papers about health centers and what to do if we got sick or if we got COVID. And they were just very helpful in keeping us updated on COVID in Italy.
Great, thanks, Abby. So Chase, now you didn't start when you were planning on starting. So Chase was there, I think a week late, is that when you were able to get in. Can you talk a little bit though about what CAPA did once students were there to help them make the adjustment?
Yeah, so because I went pre-vaccines and Italy was pretty strict with requirements, in addition to having negative tests, we needed to have a 14-day on-site quarantine. So all of my roommates ended up having to quarantine while we were there, which made it difficult to like get groceries and stuff. But our program helped us coordinate grocery delivery services, which is a lot more complicated than it sounds, dealing with language barriers and all of that. And then they'd also like show up with like little treats for us occasionally and leave them at our door. So even through like the quarantine period, they were definitely supportive and like even tried to interact with us as much as they could.
Thanks, Trace. So in the before times and even the during times and definitely the going forward times, part of the on-site orientation is also helping students learn their host city. So they're moving out of tourist mode and into more feeling like a local. So they're going to be doing tours of the city, like walking tours. How do you get from your apartment to class? Where are your closest, grocery stores, pharmacies? How does public transport work? So we never want to send a student into a situation, and we wouldn't send a student into a situation where it was like, figure it out. Like the support they're going to get before they go and their in-country support, we want them to be successful. So they have access to all of this information. Okay, so some fast facts about education abroad. So all approved UMass programs, students are earning credits and completing graduation requirements. So this can look different depending on the student's major and academic plans. But before students go abroad, they get course approvals. So they know exactly how these classes are coming back. They know if it's fulfilling a specific requirement, if they're taking things for elective credits. So they need to get to graduation. So that's the education side of education abroad. When students are abroad, they are still active UMass students, which means they can use their financial aid. There's a few exceptions. There's for in-state students, if they have in-state tuition credits, like John and Abigail Adams, if students have work study, those that they don't get to keep because they're not physically on campus. But we work with them to explain the costs, how they pay, but financial aid can be used. So with a few exceptions, again, those in-state credits, their financial aid does go with them. Scholarships are available, deadlines are early. Some programs can cost less than a semester at UMass, sometimes especially for out-of-state students. Other programs can cost more. You have to look at the location, the exchange rate, airfare. There's a lot of budget information that we help students find so they understand what they're paying for and what's going to be out of pocket. So the bill will never be the same, exactly the same as what they pay for a semester at UMass, and we'll help them figure that out. We are also happy to meet with families because we know the finances can be very confusing. Often what parents want to know is how the payment plan and the 529 savings plan works. They work, and we'll talk to you when it gets more specific. So yes, education abroad can be affordable. Okay, so Chase is an out-of-state student. So can you compare what your semester in Italy was like and what your semester in the Czech Republic will be like compared to your normal UMass costs?
Yeah, definitely. So as an out-of-state student, going abroad for me is the most financially smart decision I can make. When I went abroad my first time with CAPA in Florence, I ended up receiving excess financial aid, around $3,000 of excess financial aid that I could use for personal travel and personal expenses that I had. And when I go to the University of New York, Prague in the fall, I'm going to actually receive around $11,000 in excess financial aid. So that's a lot of money. Most of it is just my financial aid from UMass that will go with me when I go abroad. But I also receive scholarships that are specifically for students studying abroad. So scholarships from the International Programs Office, like our need-based and merit-based ones, scholarships from the institutions that I'm studying abroad with. And then also I received the Gilman Benjamin Award from the US State Department department, which I received $5,000 with them, and I'm taking that when I go in the fall. So that is available for Pell Grant recipients and really can help low-income students studying abroad.
And Catherine, you also won the Gilman Award. Can you talk about how that helped you offset your costs?
Yeah, of course. So I was in an interesting situation where I was supposed to be abroad for 1 year, but because of COVID, I was only able to go for half of the year. And I received $3,000 from the Gilman Scholarship in order to go abroad, which I used towards first buying a new laptop, which was, I think very important during COVID, as well as, buying my plane ticket, for example. So it was all for the expenses for studying abroad. I also received a scholarship from IPO. We do offer 2 scholarships that all students are welcome to apply for. And yeah, it all worked out.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So I do want to point out that not all students do make money when they go abroad, but we do have some affordable programs. And if students are planning ahead, because those scholarship deadlines are early, there are options to help them cover their time abroad, including those out-of-pocket costs. So there's several options for what students can do while they're abroad. So in a normal year, we have around 300 programs that range from 2 weeks during the summer, or even, in the winter as well, like 3 credits in 3 weeks. Students can also go for a full academic year. We have short-term programs. So they have a lot of options for what they can do. And when they are abroad, they can take classes the same way that they would here at UMass. There's also options for internships, research, service learning. We have field studies programs, language studies, and there are homestay options as well. So we talk to students about what they want their time abroad to look like. Some students want UMass abroad, and we can help them find that. So what feels similar to UMass? Who are they going to be in classes with? Size of the host city, size of the university. Some students want to be, if possible, the only American on their program, and we can help them find that as well. Probably a little rare, but we can look at other options. And then of course there's everything in between. All right, so I'm going to start with Catherine. So can you talk about how you chose your program and then the academic requirements you completed abroad?
Yes. So as a Japanese major, I knew that I wanted to study abroad in order to improve my Japanese. However, as a sociology major, after speaking with my academic advisor, I was informed that I would not be able to graduate on time if I did not take sociology courses abroad. So that was how I narrowed down my program, choosing the program in Japan that had the most sociology courses. While abroad, I completed my arts and literature, general education requirement. I also completed several Japanese language and culture electives and requirements for both majors. Yeah.
Thanks. Abby, same question.
Yeah, so my situation was actually a little unique. I originally was supposed to go somewhere else in Italy, but then like 2 months before I was supposed to leave, my program got canceled because of COVID. But USAC and UMass both were very helpful and helped me find a different program that worked for me. While I was abroad, I ended up taking my last gen ed, and then I took my last social science, which was needed for my public health degree. Yeah.
And did you know you wanted to go to Italy when you first started, or did you need to meet with us to kind of narrow down your location?
I definitely had to meet with UMass a bunch of times to figure out where I wanted to go. I didn't really care where I went. I knew I just wanted to go abroad. I actually originally didn't think Italy was going to be possible for me because I didn't think I was going to be able to find classes to fulfill my requirements. But obviously I did, which I was very happy about.
That's why we are here. We want to help students find that perfect match. And Chase, you also had kind of a unique situation. So if you want to talk about your entire journey about researching programs.
Yeah, so initially when I went abroad, I was hoping to use it for my major, but because I went abroad in the spring of 2021, so when COVID was a lot worse, I had a ton of program cancellations. I think I ended up actually going on like my 5th program choice. And I still had a great time and was able to complete academic requirements. So I got to fulfill my diversity US one, which I used with the history of the mafia class for. So a really interesting class that you get to take for a gen ed. And then in going abroad again in the fall, I really wanted to take international relations classes to apply to my major. And I found a great program that was very affordable with them. So I ended up picking that.
Thanks. So we have different types of programs for students. So we have programs where students are enrolled in a host university. So they're in class with those host country students, international students, and other American students. And they have access to all those university resources the same way they do here at UMass. So clubs, societies, events, rec centers, everything that they get at UMass, whatever that host universities offers, students can take advantage of. Another option is a global studies center. So here courses are taught by the program's faculty and they're structured around the host country or city. So the classes are with other students on the program who are mostly Americans, but the courses aren't sort of like a class that you would take at UMass. So why bother going abroad? They really want students to understand where they're living. And their activities and resources will be through the program provider. And then we have some hybrid programs where they have some classes at a host university, some at the program center. And one option is not better than another. In some areas, they might only have the option of a global studies center. In other areas, it's their host university programs. It's what has the academics that the student wants as well as the experience. So I'm going to start with Catherine because she was enrolled in a host university. So can you talk about sort of what that was like compared to UMass in an online experience?
Okay. Yeah, so it was quite similar to UMass in that, you know, the class sizes could range from 12 students, for example. That was the size of my Japanese language class, but there was, you know, other classes, you know, 100, 200 level that could be 100 plus students, which we did online. So I think it's very similar to UMass in that way, that it really does depend on the subject that you're taking and the level that you're taking as well. Yes, so I would say also the Zoom experience was quite similar as well. And in particular, because my university was kind of based on the American, I would say, education system. So we both had, we had Japanese and courses in English as well. So they were similar in that way. I think in particular, when you're going abroad, you can also take courses that are specific to that country. So I was able to take a judo class, which I would not have been able to take if I was here at UMass. So that was an amazing opportunity to take, and I took that on campus.
So Chase, you were not interested in a global studies center when you first started doing your research, but that's where you took your classes. So can you describe that compared to UMass and why it ended up being a wonderful choice for you?
Yeah, so my initial apprehension towards it was that I thought it was going to be less of an academic experience than if I went to a host university, which did not end up being the case at all. The class sizes for the Global Study Center that I was at were very small, so you really are able to develop a close relationship with the professors. All of our professors were Italians who just taught international students, so they both understood the host country and like were able to give us great recommendations, but also knew that we're studying abroad and like we want to have a experiences in this city, in this country that a lot of us hadn't ever been in before. So they really tried to get us out of the classroom and engage with the city and the people around us a lot. So it ended up being a really positive experience.
Thanks. And so Abby, you went to a smaller university. So can you talk about what you thought the academic experience was going to be like, and then what the actual experience was?
Yeah, so I, like AJ just said, I went to a very small university. Like my classes were at most 20 kids. But when I was applying to go abroad and thinking about going abroad, I honestly thought the classes, to be completely honest with you, were going to be stupid and just like really like not actual classes, and I wouldn't really have to show up or I wouldn't have to do any work. That's not true. You do have to show up and you do have to do work. They are actually classes. It is that part of study abroad, which it ended up being totally fine. I feel like the classes were less work than any of the classes I have at UMass, but they still are some work. Like I still had papers to write and still had homework to do. But they were great. You can take classes that you can never take at UMass. Like I took an Italian cooking class, or I took an Italian like food and wine class where we went wine tasting a lot. So they were great. They were a lot of fun, but they definitely are work and you can't just go for fun.
I love that Abby points that out, because we often do have students where we'll ask them, do you want to go abroad or do you want to study abroad? The food and wine courses are very popular, and they are 300 level courses. So you're not just enjoying the food and drink of your host country, you're doing work, you're writing papers. All right, we also have faculty taught programs. So these are short-term summer or semester options. They're taught by UMass faculty, and you're in class with other UMass students, and you often have a much smaller class size. So Nick's faculty taught program was a service learning experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick to talk about his time abroad.
Yeah, so the program that I picked was actually connected to a class that I had been taking freshman year, and it was a 10-day service learning trip to the Dominican Republic, and we got 4 credits in 10 days for that program, which is, when you think about it, pretty crazy. And there was a class component where we would sit in the classroom for a couple hours a day and kind of like learn about certain things that we were going to do. So, for example, there was a time when we went into a community and helped paint a classroom, and we spent a couple hours before making that trip in the classroom, kind of talking about what it is that we would be doing, as well as learning about the right way to maneuver through the space, things like that, how to carry ourselves, how to dress properly, all that stuff. But it was a very engaging and just overall fun way to study abroad, in my opinion. And not that there's one type of study abroad that's better than another, but the program that I did end up going on was very fulfilling in the fact that not only was it connected to coursework, credits, classes that we were doing, but we also got the opportunity to actually, volunteer, go out into the community and actually make an impact, and also feel like we were, feel fulfilled in what we were doing as well as what we were learning.
Thanks, Nick. All right. So our next topic is living abroad. So when students go abroad, they're required to stay in the program provided housing. So we do not send students to figure it out and find their own place to live. Housing is part of this application process. But housing can mean many things. For some students, they choose homestays. These are carefully vetted families. They've often been working with our providers for 20 years or more. So they started when they were maybe first married or even still single. They raised their own children who are now adults with their own children. And this is our students who are doing language study in particular really like these placements because their families won't speak English, so they're forced to speak in that host country's language. Students also might have the option to live on campus in a residence hall or an international house. Some programs, students are going to be living in apartments with other students on their program, other international students, students from their host university. And the location of housing varies as well. Sometimes you're right on campus, sometimes you have a commute. And students quickly learn, public transportation if they've got a 45-minute commute. And that's part of that on-site orientation as well. How do you get, again, from your housing to class? So students who aren't familiar with public transport and maybe don't even take the UMass shuttle and have never had to deal with public transport, they're going to have that support to learn how it works. Public transport abroad tends to be clean, on time, and it works, so students figure it out very quickly. If students live on campus here at UMass when they go abroad, they are eligible to move back on campus when they get back. So students won't lose their UMass housing assignments, and we'll talk to them more when it comes time about how that process works. So Nick, I'm going to start with you because you had a homestay. Can you talk about what that experience was like?
Yeah. So I lived, so the program that I went on, we were split into 2 pairs. So I had a roommate who was also on the program with me, but we each lived with a host family. I had a host mom, and I found at first I was kind of nervous about the experience, obviously, living with a stranger in a country that I'd never been to. What is it going to be like, all of this? But I was actually, pleasantly surprised and happy at how easy and comfortable it felt to actually live with this stranger. So each of the programs with host families, the host families are thoroughly vetted, experienced. They're passionate about being host families, otherwise they, wouldn't offer to do it. And they're, it's a very enriching way to get to interact with the culture there. So host families are required to provide you at least 2 meals a day. And oftentimes they will also do laundry for you. But as someone who had been learning, Spanish through middle school and high school, doing a little bit in college, I found the experience of living with a host family in a Spanish-speaking country very beneficial to my Spanish language skills. So although my host mom knew how to speak English well and fine, she just decided not to. So I was actually forced to speak Spanish with her, whether I wanted to or not. And, it might have been a tiny bit challenging at first, but, I was able to connect a lot deeper with her as an individual, but also just the culture and appreciate the place that I was being in. So not every program will have a host family option, unfortunately, but it's definitely something that I would advocate for if it is an option. And if you do really want to immerse yourself in a culture, perhaps practice the language as well.
So Catherine, can you talk about your on-campus residence hall?
Yeah, so I lived on a dorm on campus, and the students who lived in the dormitories were other Japanese students. Because of COVID, I was one of the only international students at the university, maybe 1 out of 10 students who were not living with me in the same dorm. So I very quickly had to put my Japanese speaking skills to use, which I had been very hesitant to use. But I became very comfortable using Japanese, and we all learned, to take out Google Translate or, Japanese to English dictionary in order to understand what we were both trying to say. But it was a very wonderful experience. I think if I hadn't been put into a situation where I had to use Japanese, my Japanese most likely wouldn't have improved as much as it has now. So I'm very grateful for that experience. Living in the dorm, they were also of the same age. So we were able to hang out, and they were able to show me around the campus, but also the different, for example, restaurants or what kind of stores were around the university, because my orientation was canceled due to COVID, but instead my dorm mates showed me around the city and what are the places that, you know, the students frequent as well. So it was a very great experience.
Great, thanks. Chase, can you talk about your apartment in Italy?
Yeah, so when I was in Italy, I got to live in an apartment, and I lived with two girls who were also abroad with the same program. It wasn't like anybody was living with strange, random Italians who they did not know. So it was nice to have people from the program that were I was living with, and our apartments were already ready for us when we moved in. So they had our linens there, towels, pots, pans, everything. All we had to do was bring our clothes, and the location of the apartment was great. I mean, you could see the Duomo out of my window, and out of another window in our apartment, you could see Santa Croce. So it was like the best location in the city, maybe like a 5-minute walk from our classes. So you're not going to be in some gross, horrible apartment. They're definitely nice and new and safe.
And Abby, you had a bit more of a commute, but what was your apartment like?
So I also was in an apartment in Italy. Again, I lived with someone from my program. It was just me and her. But everyone in my program was in the same apartment complex, so we were all like a few floors away from each other. My apartment was a very good location for like grocery and like laundry. We had laundry in our building, and then our grocery store was like a 5-minute walk, maybe. So that was pretty sweet. My school was about 2 miles from my apartment. I walked every day. I enjoyed walking the 2 miles. It was a great way to see the city, a great way to like learn like the culture. But a lot of kids in my program just ended up taking the bus because there was a bus stop right outside of our apartment complex. Another really big perk about my apartment was that the rent was extremely cheap. I had to pay rent every month, but compared to rent in America, it was very kind to our bank accounts. I think I paid about $400 every month to have my own room and my own bathroom. So it was pretty sweet.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay, so I have one more question for our alum, but first I want to make sure everyone has our contact information. So if you're a UMass student, we've got our QR code here, and I think Eileen is going to drop into the chat a link to our IPO Education Abroad page. We are in 70 Butterfield Terrace, which I just realized that address dropped off. It's next to Gorman Hall, behind the construction for the new Newman Center. You can email us, it's easy, it's abroad@umass.edu. So we encourage everyone to reach out. When you get to our site, there's information for students on next steps, how to get started, our peer advising. You don't need an appointment, you just come see us. So please reach out. Going abroad can be very confusing. There can be a lot of anxiety around it. The peers and I, the advisors, we tell students every day, if you don't have questions, we don't have a job, and none of this should make sense if you've never done it before. So I encourage all of you students, families, reach out to us, let us know what you need. And our final question, so why should students go abroad? So Nick, you've been helping students go abroad for 3 years now. Why?
That's a good question. Well, many reasons, but I think for me, the most important thing and the biggest thing that I advocate for when it comes to studying abroad is that going abroad, spending time living in another country in the world, you know, it can be English speaking, non-English speaking, whatever, but just the fact that you're going to another country that's not the United States and living there for some time puts you, in my opinion, at a greater advantage than someone who's never done that or never traveled outside of the United States. One, it provides you with a super awesome experience to get to know a new culture, get to know new traditions, interact with new people. But I think that studying abroad and living in another country allows you to further develop yourself as a global citizen. And in turn, that being a better global citizen will in turn provide you with a more fresh, a more understanding, and perhaps a broader perspective on the world in general, maybe different world issues, but any number of things. And then that in turn will translate back over to your life back here in America and your future. So I think that studying abroad and what it can offer for you in terms of your development as a person, as a global citizen, as well as just, you know, understanding of different things and understanding of the world. I think that that is one of the biggest benefits of studying abroad that will continue to affect your life and benefit you after you come back to America.
Thanks. And Nick was planning on doing a full semester abroad after his short-term program, but COVID. All right, Catherine, same question.
Well, that was perfectly said. So I guess I won't repeat what Nick said. But for me personally, studying abroad made me decide what I would like to do for my future. And I feel like that's what, that can happen to other students as well who are going to study abroad. As a Japanese major, I did know that I wanted to work with the Japanese language, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to live and work in Japan or if I wanted to work at a Japanese company here in the United States. But after my study abroad experience, I didn't want to return as a tourist, and instead I wanted to return as a resident to Japan. So as a senior, I'm currently applying for work programs in different language schools in Japan in order to, get my foot in the door and see what kind of possibilities will come for me while I'm in Japan. So I think study abroad can not only open up, your perspective as a global citizen, as Nick stated, but it can also give you more ideas for what you would like to do in the future, and even, ideas that you had never considered before.
Thanks, Catherine. Abby, what do you think?
Well, studying abroad, you not only learn so much about the world, like they were saying, but you also learn so much about yourself. You're pushed so far outside of your comfort zone, where it almost forces you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You gain so much self-confidence or self-worth, or just being able to see yourself doing something that you've never done before, and you're alone almost. You're not alone, but you're also this is something new, and you're not with your family, you're not with you may not be with your friends, but you're seeing yourself, you're oh, you know what, I can do it, I did do it, and I'm having a great time, and I'm doing great. You also get a whole new perspective on education, where you're out experiencing different cultures and getting hands-on experience, and seeing stuff through your own eyes, and you kind of just see that learning is much more than just the classroom, and then it's just great.
Thanks, Abby. So Chase, I don't know if you have much to add, but you can talk about why students should go and why you're going again.
Yeah, I'm going to try to avoid being repetitive, but it really does change your life for the better. Vocationally, educationally, it helped me orient my goals and what I wanted to do with my life. Personally, I grew and developed and made skills that I had never really engaged with before. As we kind of live in this increasingly global world, getting out there and seeing it really will do wonders for you. And I'm grateful enough to be able to go a second time. I would go a third and a fourth and a fifth if I could. But it really is the most amazing experience. And you have a whole network of support when you do it. So getting out there and doing it while you have people to help you do it is such an amazing experience that I'm endlessly grateful for.
And one of Chase's references for her peer advisor position was her faculty from when she was in Italy. So she's got great international resources and networking skills now. All right. So we're going to turn it over for Q&A. So Eileen.
We have lots of questions. So I've been trying to answer some already answered. So there's about 27 or so that have been answered. And there's a bunch still open. So I can read those. There were some I thought would be better to like talk it out versus typing. So I can just start now, AJ, and we can address them. But someone asked about the current situation in Ukraine and what the risk management and assessment is going on for programs in Europe.
So again, our Director of International Health, Safety, and Security is in contact with our in-country partners. It's not something that we're planning on canceling programs. Our students who are abroad right now, risk management is not a concern out of the norm. When looking at like what happened with COVID, where it was a situation where no one really had plans, we immediately reached out to figure out, okay, what's going to be the safest for the students? What do we need to do? So our regular risk management is happening, and there is attention being paid to what's happening in the Ukraine, but we're not right now, we're not anticipating a change of our countries for next year.
Great. Okay, so the next question, are students required to register with the US Embassy once in their location? And what's in place if a student has to evacuate due to civil unrest? Are they advised what to do and, you know, an evacuation plan?
Absolutely. So there's a program, it's the Smart Traveler Enrollment Plan run through the Department of State. And we strongly encourage students to sign up with that program. They can list all their personal travel as well as, you know, the dates of their study abroad program. And if something happens, they get an email explaining the situation with suggestions for what they need to do, areas to avoid. Their program will also immediately reach out if something does happen where students are asked to reply to an email or a text. We will also reach out as well. We have a new software system that comes with something called SafeCheck, where we're able to text students to ask them to check in. If it does turn into a situation where evacuation is needed, again, we have all these plans in place already, and our in-country providers do as well. So if something like that did happen, it's in place, but let's hope we never need to go that extreme.
Okay, so the next question is if anyone can share information about the Marine Resources Studies program in the Turks and Caicos. I don't think anybody on the panel did that particular program.
Yeah, so this one it's a pretty specific question. So this is one of our examples of a field studies program. So I recommend this person either send an email. One great thing about going abroad is it's not like your college search where there's huge essays and things you have to do. If you're eligible and there's a spot open, you are going. So you only have to apply to one program. The Turks and Caicos program is small, but as long as you get your application in on time, but definitely send an email to abroad and I can put you in touch with some alum.
Okay, great. If someone has no financial aid, can you say about how much more money it would cost an out-of-state student to study abroad?
It depends where you're going, how long you're going to be there, cost of living, exchange rate. This is where you come in and talk to us, and we help you find that match between the academics, what you want the experience to look like, and we'll get way more specific about the costs.
Yep. And then just some concerns about language and living in a foreign country if students have trouble getting around when they're abroad.
Yeah, so we send students abroad who only speak English to countries where English is not the primary language. Their courses will be in English, and often the program will have like an intro level language class, survival language. There's a lot of apps students can use. We of course encourage them to do like Duolingo or something to learn some basic phrases in their host language. But again, there is that 24-hour support. So students have told us like in the past, if they needed to navigate the healthcare system. So like I had a peer advisor a few years ago, also in Japan, like Catherine, who got really sick. And so just reached out to her program provider, was like, I need help making a doctor's appointment. Can you come with me in case there's like a language barrier? So yeah, we do encourage students to look at countries where English isn't the primary language and to also pick up some of that language.
And do students need to register for classes at UMass just in case they don't go abroad?
We'll talk about that specifically later. They can, and then once we process them as going abroad, we drop them from their courses. So yeah, they can or they can't. It's up to the student.
Okay. And somebody,
With tuition waivers, sorry, I'm seeing that.
that's what I
about
was gonna say, yep.
the tuition waivers are. Depending on the waiver, we'll answer that question. So I encourage your student to send an email and we'll put them in touch with our accounts manager who knows how the money works, and we'll be able to explain all of this. So it depends on the waiver. I'm not going to have an answer to that question. So please email abroad@umass.edu.
Okay, are there any study abroad programs for students with learning disabilities?
So our program's part of when you apply, there will be part of the application that asks you about any disability services that you get on campus and what you'll need access to abroad. It might not be identical to what it looks like here, but they're going to work with students. So if you have extra time on tests, if you have a note taker, if you need like screen readers, things like that, you'll be in contact with your program to find out what that will look like. We encourage, obviously, we want all students in all majors from all backgrounds to go abroad. So we'll work with you to make sure you're going to be successful.
Okay, so our next question is, do students get any free time off during this semester? Like if a family visits, like spring break or, breaks?
I'll turn that, which one of the peers can talk about that? Chase, thanks.
Yeah, so Kappa usually does have a spring break period of time where you get a week off and you can travel to a bit more further distances that you couldn't on weekends. And a lot of times that does include family visits where they'll meet not only like the students and the students' roommates, but also like the faculty and the teachers, because a lot of parents are interested in like, who are these random foreign adults my children are around all the time.
Abby, do you want to add anything to that?
For USAC, we didn't have a week off, but we also, our time was kind of sensitive because we weren't able to get a visa, so I was only allowed to be there for 90 days. But we did have, my parents came out for Thanksgiving, so it was like a long weekend, I think. But that's it. There was like, my program didn't really have any breaks.
It is a little harder with COVID right now because students aren't always able to stay as long, but some programs are set up where there aren't classes on Fridays because they want students to travel. It's not guaranteed. And if it's a host university, you're on that host university schedule. So there's often breaks as well.
And someone's asking, because we shared the link to UMass Abroad so they can search programs and the difference between internal and authorized when they're searching in the system.
That's really for us. So internal programs are the ones that we run. So those are like the exchanges, and then programs that we build the pages for to maintain for our partners. Authorized programs are the ones like API, Kappa USAC, our partner providers. So it kind of doesn't mean anything. It's just who runs the program and maintains the information. When students are narrowing down the options, we'll explain more about what you get with each type of program. When students go on an exchange, it's very similar to UMass, where they're paying whatever the tuition and fees are. And then again, they have all the access to the university resources. Whereas if they go with our program providers, API, Kappa, Studying Portugal Network, USAC, CEA, CIS, there's a ton more, Teen, like all of those. They become a paying client. They get a high level of customer service. So in addition to their tuition and fees, they're paying, their program costs cover excursions, weekly activities, specific pre-departure. So one's not better than the other, and cost-wise, depending on what you're looking at, it might be more, it might be less. So don't get hung up on internal and authorized. They're all approved UMass programs that you're earning credit.
Somebody's asking about their own living arrangements, if they have family where their son or daughter is going and they want to live with them, if that's possible.
So there is a petition process that, not surprisingly, you meet with Andrea Drake because we need to make sure that it's going to be safe and secure. It's going to be there the whole time. Like if a student gets there and finds out like, oh no, this person moved. So it's not guaranteed, but we will, your student will talk to Andrea. Exceptions have been made.
And then someone's asking, this is a Florence specific question, so I don't know, Chase, potentially you could answer it, but if someone's asking about a student hostel and wondering the difference between the hostel and apartments and what one's considered best.
Yeah, I can. So we have 3 different programs in Florence. We have Kappa, CIS, and API. For the most part, students are going to be living in apartments. With Kappa, the apartments are scattered all across the city, still in the central area, but you'll probably be in a building with a mix of Italians and then potentially other students. I believe it's a similar situation for API and CIS. So for the most part, if your student is going to Florence, they will be living in an apartment with other students who are abroad from their program. There are occasionally like homestay options for those students, but I believe that for the most part, if you're doing Florence, you're going to be in an apartment.
Okay. And then as far as transportation is concerned, will there always be public transportation if the distance is greater than walking distance? And if so, what do you consider walking distance? So
That's impossible to answer. Some students, if it's more than 2 blocks, they want.
I had a 30-minute walk. I'll just say that when I lived in Spain for my program.
Yeah, other
but
students
walking the streets of Europe, so it's different than Amherst.
Some students will have like a 45-minute commute. If it's not within walking distance, I don't know if there's like a universal meaning to that. Yes, we're not going to send students on a program where campus is an hour away and they have no way of getting there.
Are students required to have a certain GPA in order to participate in study abroad?
So each program does have a GPA requirement. Generally, it's around 2.5. It can be higher. Direct enroll at host universities tend to be higher. For students to be eligible to go abroad on the UMass side, they need to be in good standing with the university. So that means they're in good academic standing. And they also don't have any open Dean of Students sanctions. We'll talk to students who have concerns about lower GPAs about what their options are.
Okay.
There's so many great banking and finances. It depends on the country. And this is where the pre-departure orientation comes in. So students will know what they need to do if they need to open a bank account in country, how they're going to access their money, setting things up with their bank before they go. As far as getting started, there's kind of a lot of questions here. We encourage students to start as early as possible. The earlier they start planning, the more options they're going to have. Applications open a year out. Most of the work is generally the semester before they go. But if they start planning their first year on campus, even if they don't think they're going to go until junior year, they're going to have a lot more options. Students who are coming in now who want to go next semester, we really have to drill down to academics, and some programs might have had earlier deadlines. So we encourage students to get started right away.
Someone was asking specifically about the J term, the January term study abroad.
So we're right at time. So I think, Chase, if you need to leave, I know you've got another appointment if you've got to go. So the winter terms aren't as popular because, again, it's 3 credits in 3 weeks. And so some students are a little concerned about how much time they're going to be in class. So it does tend to be we don't have as many participants in winter. And yes, it's part of education abroad. They can't get financial aid or scholarships though, because it is only 3 credits. You need to be at 6 credits to apply for scholarships or financial aid. But yeah, approved programs. We do have some great options that students do like to do to pick up maybe a gen ed or do some language requirements. As far as medical, it depends on the country. Again, they'll have access to in-country healthcare, and how that works depends on the country. Your student will know before they go. As far as meal plans, they're not a thing abroad. It's very much a US thing. They are in some schools, host universities like in the UK, some in Ireland. But students have told us that if they did it, they wish they hadn't. Some students who live in the international house on their campus liked it, but compared to UMass, I mean, nothing compares to UMass. And so if there is a catered option, it might be open a couple hours in the morning and in the evening with only a few options. So students find that they'd rather shop and cook for themselves. And there's plenty of places like cafes and restaurants and pubs to get food as well. Travel insurance, the emergency travel insurance is part of their education abroad fee. So that's covered. As far as supplemental insurance, we don't, it's not required. Some students, it's worth the cost for them. Other students, not so much. Now that COVID's happened, a lot of students are more interested in things like for flights, cancel for any reason, recouping costs if you booked travel, but we don't require it. Let's see, we're moving right along. Again, I encourage all of you, if we haven't answered your question, send an email to abroad. I hope I didn't miss anything. It's depending on the program is the turnaround time. Sometimes you'll find out very quickly that you've been accepted. Other times they might not make the decision until after the application deadline. Some students will delay their graduation. So if they realize they can't do a semester abroad, but they could do summer, or maybe they want to stay on for an additional semester, even though they've completed all of their UMass requirements, they can delay their graduation date, and they do it through Spire. And then their official UMass graduation on their transcript will be when their transcript comes back. So even though maybe they finished in the spring, they'll have a summer graduation date. Students can still walk. So if a student is thinking of going in the summer or in the fall, they can walk with the rest of their class in May for graduation. Internships vary. They tend to be 20 hours a week, and there's a class attached. So there are anywhere from 3 credits to 8 credits, depending on what those class components are. So they will be taking other classes in addition to the internship. As far as communicating with parents, that's up to families. There's different ways. A lot of students use WhatsApp. I don't know, actually, Catherine, Abby, and Chase, how did y'all communicate back home?
A mixture of WhatsApp, and then I also had an international phone plan that I just used for the 3 months I was there, and then ended it once I left.
I also had an international phone plan, so I was able to just text my parents.
I had pocket Wi-Fi, so I would always be connected to the Wi-Fi, whether it was the one at my dorm or the actual device that I had, and I often used WhatsApp.
Yeah, we encourage students to come up with a plan with their families about how often do you expect me to check in, make sure everyone knows that they might not have access to Wi-Fi the second they land, and so what's this going to look like? Some students will get, I think probably most students get a SIM card, make sure their phone's unlocked and get a SIM card while they're in country, depending on how the international plan works with their current phone plan. For the Salamanca summer program,
I can do it really quick. It's just 1 month in the summer. They get 9 credits of Spanish because they go with a Spanish faculty member from UMass. So they get a total of 9 credits. It's just the month of July. Everything's in Spanish. They live with a local host family. And yeah, I think it's July 2nd to the 30th this year. And it's about $5,000 for that program, a little more than 5,000.
Deadline is March 15th for that one, if you want to go this summer. And we can, again, put you in touch with other, no, they've all graduated because we didn't run it last summer. But if you want to know more.
Run it last summer, actually.
Oh, they did do it last.
Yep,
Right. It was one of 2. We only had 1 or 2 programs.
Yep. Come talk to us. Mike Romero is the coordinator.
Yeah, or just email abroad and I'll get you to the right person.
Yep.
As far as what term is the best to go abroad, it depends. So spring junior year is kind of this still a holdout as the traditional time to go, but that's not always the case. It depends on the student's major, definitely. We send engineering students abroad and they tend to go second semester sophomore year because it keeps them on track for graduation. Other students just prefer to go sophomore year to work on prereqs for their 300, 400 level courses. Some students will plan their academics so they can go spring junior year. And depending on how early they started planning, they might take a semester off from their major and work on other requirements, or they specifically plan their semesters so they can take very specific courses for their major while they're abroad. And for some students, it's just easier for them to go as a senior. So it really depends. As far as internships, more and more students are interested in internships. Anytime you're doing an internship, again, that'll be part of it. And then you also have academics. So you'll be doing a few classes in addition to your internships. It's getting more popular. I don't know what the percentage is. It's definitely not equal. Most students, when they go abroad, it's for the traditional classroom setting.
Someone asked specifically about API Argentina. So I just said that lots of UMass students have done that program and it is definitely an approved option.
Applications for the fall close on April 1st. Some programs have earlier deadlines. There's a UMass Abroad application, and then you're going to have a second partner application. So please come see us. Stop by the advising center and we can look at what your options are. And then any final words from our peer advisor, return students? We kind of burned through that, but you want to leave us with anything? So Catherine, if you could go again, would you go?
Yes. In a heartbeat, I would go once again. And I think that's one of the great things and also the bad things about working at IPO is that, I'm helping everyone else go abroad, which is such an exciting experience, but I also want to go abroad again, but since I'm graduating, it's not possible. But yeah, I would go again if I could.
I have one more quick question. Actually, AJ, if you don't mind. I think we already answered this one. Communicating with parents. Yeah, we already answered that. Okay, sorry. I just saw this one in the chat. So I think we're all good.
I do have one, AJ.
Sure.
Is there any programs, would you say, on campus that students don't have an opportunity to go abroad because maybe of how the curriculum is for that program, or it just doesn't give them time to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have worked with it's mostly STEM programs that can be challenging.
We had a lot of questions about engineering specifically.
Yeah, we send a lot of engineers abroad, but we work with those departments. So we have a program specifically for our nursing students. So in the fall, we have nursing in Madrid, and students will be taking classes that keep them on track. And so if you're a nursing student, you have one choice. If you're in other STEM majors, we'll look at what those requirements are, what you need, and you might not have as many options as maybe, a psych major or an English major, but truly any student in any major can go abroad as long as they start planning early. If a student comes in as a senior, you know, they want to go fall senior year and they have a lot of requirements that they need to do. And if they don't get a certain class, they're not going to graduate. It might not work out, but we can look and see what those options are.
Thank you so much. All right, I think this is the end for this presentation. Thank you everyone for being here, from AJ to all of our wonderful students panel, and everyone else that is in the background answering questions and so forth. This was extremely informational, and I'm sure our advisory, our families enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. So thank you, families, for being with us. And if we had students on that call also, we thank you for being here. And like AJ said, contact the International Programs Office if you have questions or concerns. Advisors are available to meet specifically with students and answer any questions that they have. We have our next webinar scheduled for next week. So please tune in again. And as always, we will share information with you, the link for the different webinars, and we will see you soon. So go UMass. Thank you, everyone.